Okay, Andre, do you want to just introduce yourself and
Yeah. You see, first of all, I want to say thank you very much to you because not so many people interested in our situation. So I, with pleasure, to talk with you. My name is Andre Kochetov. I am the member of Council of Federation of Trade Union of Lugansk People's Republic, and I would like to talk about the situation which is happening in our land, I mean in Donbas. First of all, I want to say that for us, this war started not in end of the February of 2022. Our land under the attack of Ukrainian army and in war condition already from 2014. And that's why it's possible to say that during last 8 years we lived under the bombs of Ukrainian army, and that's why for all our people now it's possible to say that this is the end of the war, which started by Vladimir Putin, and our people very thankful for him because it is really difficult situation. Because I know that in Europe nobody say that the Ukrainian army was very well prepared to invade in our territory and to kill our people. And now it's possible to say that Vladimir Putin saved something about 5 million people on our territory when he started the war. And you see, the war, I know very well, all our people know very well that it is really terrible to live under the bombs and so on. So I'm not very happy and glad that Ukraine now became as a field of the big battle. But we understand that this is a battle not between Ukraine and Russia Federation. It's battle between Western governments who support, who push Ukraine into the hot kind of war. And you see many things which were happened had happened before the beginning of this war. First of all, maybe I think you remember that there were Minsk agreements, and during something about 8 years or 7.5 years, the Ukraine always said in European mass media that we follow the Minsk agreements, but they did anything about it. And Vladimir Putin many times persists, please come back to Minsk agreements, please start to talk between Ukraine and republics of Donbas. But unfortunately, the Ukraine decided completely to refuse. And in the middle of the February, Vladimir Putin started to talk that there is no sense, any sense, to follow Minsk agreements because Ukraine did anything about Minsk agreements, and that's why I think that Ukraine put themselves in position something like a trap. So this is the first thing, and the other thing is for me. Now our soldiers could find many evidence that Ukraine became a real Nazi country, which support but Western money. And you know, even now, Joseph Borrell and other authorities of Western countries, they said, and also they support Ukraine. They gave them weapon, and I completely agree with. I don't remember the lady, Euro deputy from Ireland, who said that if you want to find the way to peace, please don't give weapon to Ukraine. And I completely agree with this. I think that Western countries did everything that our war on Ukrainian territory will continue till last Ukrainian soldier. Oh, now I would like to say as I can understand that the NATO and Western countries, they don't want this war to finish in some days or some weeks. As I understand, they want it lasts as long as possible. And that's why they put so many and sent so many weapons to Ukraine. And you can see that they try to find some negotiations, but now after the visit of Prime Minister of Great Britain, Boris Johnson, Ukraine already not refused, but they do nothing to continue the talkings with Russia Federation. And it's difficult to say when this war will stop. But I think we will see the new Ukraine without Nazism, without aggressions against Russia Federation, and so on. So I wish that at the end of the war there will be the other country, something like that of the Soviet Ukraine, which was very nice and beautiful country and very peaceful. So I hope in so. So, comrade, maybe you have some more questions because I think I already answered nearly on all of your questions. Yeah.
Okay, yes, thank you very much for the update and bringing us all up to date with what's happening on the ground in the Ukraine. Just if I can briefly summarize, a lot of people in the West believe that the violence in Ukraine started 4 weeks ago. but it is a result of the fascist coup from 2014 that Vice President at the time, Joe Biden, was involved in, along with Victoria Nuland. You then had the murders in Odessa on the 2nd of May that led people in the Crimea, Lugansk, and Donbas to desist from living under a fascist installed coup in Kiev. Then there was a military occupation of Lugansk and Donetsk, which resulted in a people's militia fighting to defend the people, which led to the independence of Lugansk and Donetsk. And then when Biden returned to power, all of a sudden more armament came into to the Ukraine, and the drums of war were being beaten between Kiev and Moscow. So a lot of people believe that the Russians went into Ukraine in order to prevent a massacre in Donetsk and Lugansk whenever the Azov battalion and the right sector were all engaged in continued violence on the contact line. So just to clarify, what influence does the fascists actually have in both the Ukrainian army and the Ukrainian government? People in the West are trying to play this down to say, yes, there's a very small, very minor a group of fascists who don't influence the government, but yet we see Zelensky pinning medals on people in the Azov battalion and the right sector. So is there really a true neo-Nazi fascist element that has large control in the Ukraine?
Oh, right. It is also a very interesting question, because if we will remember the 2014, the so-called private battalions organized in Ukraine by local oligarchs such as Igor Kolomoisky. And all of them put on their uniform the Nazi slogan, Nazi symbols. They started to use Nazi slogan, something like Ukraine. I don't remember in German, but something like Deutschland über alles. So it is the same, but about Ukraine. But in a very short period of time, this battalion became a part of military forces of Ukraine. And you see, during these 8 years, there were 2 elections of president in Ukraine. And both President Petro Poroshenko and Vladimir Zelensky, during the elections, they said that we will stop the war in 2 days. And people supported them because the majority of the people of Ukraine, they really don't want war. They would like to live in peaceful country. But unfortunately, the both president started to support the Nazi ideology. And now it's possible to say that the Nazi ideology is the ideology of real Ukraine. Now we have an opportunity to find many books for kids on the liberated territory of Lugansk Oblast, Lugansk region, or Donetsk region, and all of these books for kids, full of Nazi symbols, full the ideology that Ukrainians is the best Nazi in the world. It's the Asian Nazi. not Nazi nation. No, sorry, one of the ancient nations, and now I understood very well that they behave like a Nazi in the 30s years of the 20th century in Germany, because they also totally started to push the ideology and try to put on prison or even to kill people who didn't agree with this ideology. So the same situation now in the modern Ukraine, when the Nazi battalions kill people without any, how to say, without any punishment. So you see, I think they really believe that they're superhuman, maybe. And the rest of them is just subhumans. So it's possible to say that with support of Western countries in Ukraine, the Nazi regime grown up already, and the Russian army is just have to kill Nazis because they very dangerous, not for Ukraine or not for only Ukraine, but for Russia too. And first of all, for Russia. And that's why Russia started the military operation. So, Fran?
Yes, I like the analogy that you're making with the German Third Reich, really, in the 1930s, where they treated people as Untermensch. These were subhumans. That included Slavs. That also included Ukrainians, Russians, Jews,
Yes.
and Gypsies. Yes. I've seen video of Roma people being tied to lampposts. I've seen people being by the Ukrainian militias. I have seen Russian soldiers shot and allowed to bleed out. I've read reports of Russian soldiers being executed and their bodies mutilated. I have read reports of Russian troops that have been captured and have been physically assaulted and have lost fingers and various bodily appendages. I mean, this is very much an ideology that has no respect for the other, no respect for those who do not have the same ideology. But if we could move on, perhaps to talk about Western governments are financing and arming what is basically a neo-Nazi regime in Kiev. Are there many mercenaries, jihadists, and NATO troops involved in the battles on the ground in Ukraine at the moment? We've heard stories potentially of leading American servicemen up to the rank of perhaps generals being trapped in Mariupol, along with members of the French Legionnaire. So the Western governments are doing far more than just arm the Ukraine and train their soldiers. They're actually taking part on the battles on the ground. Would you have any information of this, Andre?
You see, unfortunately, I didn't find the official information, but unofficial, I heard many things that, first of all, there are many in Mariupol already closed, many military guys from Western countries. So I don't know exactly. It is just soldiers of fortune or instructors. But also we got an information that in Mariupol already closed their very high-ranking military officers and generals of NATO. And maybe you noticed that some weeks ago, many times, Macron, the president of France, called to Putin nearly every day, and he proposed to organize so-called green corridor to evacuate people. Who knows? Maybe he tried to save some high-ranking officers of his army. But I think in next days we will know exactly in official sources the truth of the situation, and that's why, who knows, I think it would be interesting uh, to know the truth and to show to the whole world the truth that the country is Nazi regime in Kiev.
Oh, okay.
France.
So yes, if we agree that NATO was on the ground and that NATO and America and Britain and France and Germany and Poland are all arming the Ukraine for a continued prolonged conflict. You mentioned that Boris Johnson was recently in Kiev. I believe he's promised surface-to-sea missiles for the Ukraine army. He has promised up to 200 mechanical vehicles for the army and up to £500 million of a war chest to be able to continue the war. If the liberated areas in the Ukraine run from Belarus to the Crimea and the Azov Sea, the Sea of Azov, what will prevent Western Ukraine, supported, rearmed, and financed by NATO and America, from just continuing the war on a new contact line that will now be several hundred kilometers long? It is in the interests of America to try to destroy the Russian economy to prevent a multipolar world order where people can work and governments can work in cooperation as a step to the eventual assault on China. So how do you see the war will end in Ukraine? There will be a new buffer zone in Ukraine between NATO and Russia. How do you see, will there be peace? Will there just be a Minsk III agreement, which will then not be adhered to by Zelensky, the fascists, and NATO? What are the potential futures?
You see, all our people, I mean, the people from Donbas republics were really from Minsk agreement, which lasted during 8 years and finished by nothing. And as for me, that the war will be finished in 2 or 3 or 4 months. And as I understand, the future Ukrainian state will be not so big as before. I'm sure it will be without any way to Azov or Black Sea, and it's impossible to say that there is a front line from Belarus to Crimea, because the Ukrainian army not so huge. to keep such big front line, such long front line, and as you know, the Russian army already nearly finished their very big cattle around the Donbas group of military forces of Ukraine. Something about 60,000 people there. And after that, there will be not so many military troops in Ukraine to cover the big territory of the state. And I think that in the future we will see the new Ukraine much smaller. It's not understandable for me what will be on the territory of south part of Ukraine. Maybe, who knows, some People's Republic or the new state. It's difficult to say. You see, first, now the main task to completely destroy and kill the Nazi army. This is the first task, and we will see what will happen after the war. But I think that we will see the new map of European continent after this war. I think so.
Okay, maybe just one final question that maybe you could expand on. I want to say two things. The first one is that President Zelensky has said that his new Ukraine will be more like Israel than it will look like a European country. So I assume if we look at Israel, we have armed soldiers on every street. We have prisons filled with ethnic indigenous people who do not support the government and are indeed under occupation. So the new Western Ukraine could look very much like Germany, Nazi Germany in the 1930s, with camps filled with ethnic speaking Russian Ukrainians. And just on that, Andre, I have a huge fear, which I'm sure you and many people in the region share, and that is when the war ends, if more than 1/3 of the population of the Ukraine are ethnic Russian-speaking Ukrainians, where is their place in the new Western Ukraine? Will they live under reprisals by the fascist regime? And are those people going to be in constant danger of arrest, torture, and brutality by the Ukraine intelligence services and the fascists in the militia and in the government? Who will protect the Russian-speaking Ukrainians who will be forced to live under the regime in Kiev?
You see, we strongly believe that all Ukrainians services like security service and so on will be destroyed during this war because it's completely abnormal when the people came out of their homes, came to the streets, and started to fear anybody or somebody. So I hope that there will be the completely new country after the war without any aggression to common people, and it is very important. And I think that this is the main task of Vladimir Putin, to protect all people, all Russian-speaking people and people of other nationalities who could suffer from the Nazi regime.
That's perfect. Andre, thank you very much. I hope you stay safe, and I hope that there is a conclusion to the Russian offensive very shortly, and that everyone in Ukraine can live free from fascism, free from fear, and live in peace and in brotherhood with their fellow countrymen. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, dear comrade, and thank you for your support. And also, it is important that you know now nearly in whole Europe, the Russophobia, Russophobia is right close to racism, and it is very important that people like you in Ireland try to understand our reality, the real situation. So I can say thank you very much, Frau.
Thank you, Andre. Thank you.